I have a question about the current system. Of course, basically the majority of the healthcare providers are publicly traded companies. And for a publicly traded company to survive in the stock market, they have to show continually increasing profits. Therefore, if they had a stable customer base, they have to cut something, either your benefits or the salaries of the doctors, or something has to be cut, or raise your rates. So that's why I look at the continually escalating cost of healthcare as the root problem being publicly traded companies. And so I use this as an argument for socialized medicine. It is unsustainable what we have, and all they're doing is taking money out of our pockets at an increasing rate.
Well, absolutely. There's been a great notion that, and some people call it socialized medicine, but all you need to look is around the world. Every other Tier 1 nation has universal health care. In fact, Mitt Romney was in Israel just last month, and he was praising their medical system. They have universal health care. And they're paying, they have good quality care, they're paying 8.5% of their GDP for health care. We pay 18% of our GDP goes to health care costs, and we're leaving out 50 million people. They cover everybody at 8%. We leave out 50 million, and it costs and put out 18%. So the notion that has been spread that, oh, if we cover everybody, if we have universal care, then we'll have to stand in lines, or it'll be this. All I can tell you is you can go to any country in the world that has universal health care and say, oh, look, we're crazy, or you guys are crazy. Let's put it to a vote, and you can do the American system. You'll get run right out of the country in a heartbeat. The fact is that these countries that have universal health care, their people are healthier, their people live longer, and all that money, if you want to take the difference between Israel GDP cost and our GDP cost, which is 10%, that 10% of GDP is being thrown away. If you didn't have to pay all these health costs that we have because of the private insurance companies, and your cost went down, all that money that's not going to insurance companies would be going into the economy. You know, I think we pay $600 a month for Medicare, but when I first left work, we were paying $11.50 on Cobra for 2, and that's $500 that I can be putting back into the economy every month. $500 a month. You know, going to small businesses, buying this, buying that. That's what's going to get the economy going. You know, and so when all this money is sucked up by healthcare providers, it's not in the economy. We could be doing much better without it, and it will come to that we at least need that single payer option to begin with. My view, I'll tell you my view, and I think anybody who pays health insurance premiums, universal health care is not a bad idea. If it was a bad idea, then we wouldn't be the only country that didn't have it.
On our constitutional rights with those, that you can be arrested if somebody witnesses against you. What?
Yeah, well, that's if you're talking about the National Defense Authorization Act, you may know that Mr. Hunter was on the committee, the joint House-Senate committee that put in the final language for that reauthorization bill. And he said that he looked at it very hard, and he couldn't find anything wrong with it. Well, for all my libertarian friends and my Tea Party friends who care about their civil liberties, the idea that a person could be suspected of having an association with somebody who might be a part of a terrorist group or some other thing, and could be picked up by the military and put in custody without trial, without a lawyer, indefinitely. It's in the law. It's outrageous. Now, we haven't even heard the president come against NDAA. And I'll tell you what. It is the most simple, one of the most simple things about government generally. And it was said before that power, and this is a very powerful instrument, power concedes nothing without a demand. And nobody in Congress or the president has made that demand to take that language out of the NDAA. And the people, they have to elect people to Congress who will demand that NDAA language and the Patriot Act for that matter, which is no longer necessary. I understand that in panic people, they passed it, but it is wrong. It takes away so many of our liberties regarding speech, the 4th, 5th, 6th Amendments, that it's outrageous. But now that the government's been given the power, they don't want to give it up. So it's up to the people to demand that they give it up. And the first thing they can do is elect to Congress a person who will demand it. Because our congressman right now not only doesn't demand it, he's the person that put it in place. So if you care about your civil rights, you do not want this man in Congress. That's my view.
Yes, Mr. Secor, could you can you explain to the people what the Congress is attempting to do to our Postal Service?
Well, it's really sad. This is something that's being pushed by Darrell Issa just north of here. This idea of privatization generally is one in which a lot of people in business have seen it as an opportunity. If we can just privatize all these things, that we can make an awful lot of money. And the Postal Service is a target for him as big as a target can be. So he, in 2008, or what was it, 2008, I think just before the elections there, they passed an act that said that the Postal Service must pre-fund its retirement to the tune of something like $75 billion. And they have to do it within 5 years. So, all this money that could be going to take care of the Postal Service business has to be thrown in a bank account in order to meet this demand. But we saw last year that the Postal Service said, they lost $5 billion. They didn't lose $5 billion. The only reason they show a loss is because they were forced to put all this extra money to pre-fund this retirement for so many years. In effect, the Postal Service actually made money, but because of this, it showed a loss. So all the Congress needs to do is go back to that 2008 law. It's already clear. The numbers are there. Their retirement plan is in excellent shape right now. There's no need to continue throwing these billions in every year to make it look like it's failing. Anyway, so Darrell Issa and his group will say, look, they lost $5 billion. This is failing. We need to privatize it. So what they want to do is have, again, businessmen take over the mail service. What are you going to do about rural mail? When you turn it over to a private system, they're going to set the price. And in setting the price, they will because they're private businesses, need their profit. The Postal Service doesn't run for a profit. You can depend on the Postal Service, you always have, and you still can. They're very efficient. And the idea to say that because this supposed $5 billion loss occurred is saying they're not doing their job, it's simply, it's a lie. It's just a lie. And so anybody who knows the Postal Service knows they are very, very efficient and getting more so all the time. And it's simply this pre-funding of the retirement that makes it look like it's not good business. I'll tell you this, if we were to privatize postal delivery and you had to depend on FedEx or whatever to deliver your mail, if you think a 40-odd cent stamp is something, you wouldn't believe what they will do. And you will not get daily service. You will, and the rural delivery might, I don't even know what it would be. So saving the Postal Service would be a top priority for me.
So I have a question about in the general motion of the current Congress, and has been for quite a while now, that it seems like anytime that they're able to put public money into private pockets, they go for it. It could be convincing people that we have to sell our utilities, or we have to sell this or that, or have something that used to be run by a city government replaced by a private side, and it ends up costing more, but their friends get rich. So maybe you could talk about that.
It seems to me this all started, and I know Ronald Reagan is a favorite for a lot of people. Everybody who's my age and will remember when he ran against, it must have been the first one, against Jimmy Carter. The one phrase I remember is, government can't solve the problem. Government is the problem. And because you can point to any number of things, like if you see a local construction site, the thing you always talk about, 4 people standing around, 1 man with a shovel, and all these other things. People hate the IRS. People don't like all these, the paperwork and all the things. So this just visceral dislike of government, period, is what got the privatization thing going big time. And I remember even when looking into the in the Army. When I was in the Army in Vietnam in 1968, we did our own KP. That's what you did in those days. Nowadays, all the services for the Army are run by Halliburton and people like that. It's been privatized so that your cooks and all these people that do a lot of services are private companies, and the costs are astronomical. You can look back at the troops that were in Iraq and ask them what the quality of the food was in some of those places. Because, hey, these big businesses, they have only one interest. This is what people must understand. They have only one interest: profit. And if it means taking the hamburger that you're supposed to give the troops and letting it sit for a few extra days, rather than give them quality food, but if you keep using it to near rotten, you make a lot more money. And that is your job, to make money. So the idea of people taking over, privatizing everything is absolutely wrong. And it's just a bill of goods that the people have been handed. And it goes, it's the same thing with the Postal Service. It's the same thing with other government services that were provided. People hate civil servants, but I'll tell you, having worked 13 years at Superior Court 19 years at Superior Court downtown, I can tell you, like every place, there are good employees and bad, but the overwhelming majority of the people that work with me were dedicated to good work. And they could be painted anyway if you have a bad experience with somebody, but the vast majority of all these people are dedicated people.
So to continue on with this theme about privatizing the food services and the laundry services and everything for the military. You know, they said, well, it allows the people to have more time for combat. But my experience in the military is that only a very few, very small percentage, I think it's 1% or so, of the military actually engages in combat. The remainder of the military force is there to support them and to build them up and to maintain the infrastructure of the military. So I just don't see how that's a valid argument.
No,
that they're giving people more time to be concentrating on combat.
No, that's something that can work on civilians, but you and I and any military person knows. Like when I was in the service, even in Vietnam, I might have had KP duty once a month, maybe every few weeks, and it's a non-issue because amongst the enlisted personnel, I mean that's how it was. You had a round robin thing where you had to do so much so often, but it went around. And regarding the people that are actually combat, I mean we're talking infantry people. Yeah, I mean it's a very small number of people that actually see that kind of action. I know that in Afghanistan, you have these people. A certain number of troops were in incredibly stressful situations on a daily basis. But there were other people, and it was true in Vietnam too. Depending on where you were, it was like being on a Hawaiian island. So the people that weren't there in the front lines in Afghanistan, the air conditioning bill for Afghanistan was larger than the NASA budget. So it isn't everybody that comes back from Afghanistan that had to deal with IEDs and moving through villages where you didn't know who was who, or actually getting in firefights on a regular basis. The vast majority, like you said, and never saw.
Would privatizing prisons fit into this for-profit?
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought it up because the government actually guarantees these corporations that run for-profit prisons. They guarantee them that they will have at least 85% capacity because they have to make money, and that's what they need at least to make their profit. So the government will guarantee that they will be 85% full. So we have 2% of the world's population in the United States. We have 2% of the world's population. We have 25% of the world jail population in the United States. You find, say, 15 years ago, people think that people in prison are dangerous. You know, felony people that you'd be scared to be on the street with. And the fact is, you're talking about violent criminals. 15 to 20 years ago, they made up 37% of the prison population. Today, since we've switched to for-profit prisons, and they need to keep them full, violent prisoners are only 7% of the total population. You know what they are? They're non-violent drug offenders. You know, who haven't committed a crime. They might have convicted a property crime, and they stole this in order to fund their drug habit or whatever it might be, or they got caught selling drugs, or they got caught using drugs or possessing. Okay, that's the overwhelming majority of people in prison today. And it costs us, the taxpayers, $50,000 per year to house these people in these prisons. And then on top of that, the ones that are in for-profit prisons, we have to make sure that they make their money too. And of the non-violent drug offenders that are in prison, half of them are in prison for marijuana. prison and jail,